you for coming here twice.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for reading. That was fantastic sex poem. I'm going to introduce our next featured reader. Margaret Spilman is currently a Creative Writing MFA candidate at San Francisco State University, where she is also the fiction editor for 14 Hills, volume 23.1.
Oh yeah.
In 2014, she was chosen as one of 6 writers to receive Penn Center USA's Emerging Voices Fellowship. Her story Muscle Memory won the James Kirkwood Literary Prize from UCLA Extension, and her flash piece From Here to There was a Glimmer Train Very Short Fiction Contest honorable mention. She has been published in the New Flash Fiction Review, Transcurrent, and Sparkling Link. Please welcome Margaret Spilman.
You can flip the switch.
Can I though? Does that work?
Ooh, yeah.
Ooh. Alright. I believed in the Juturna. I believed so much I was angry because the Juturna would not come to me. It would not snatch me and gobble me as punishment, no matter how often I spit on the ground, broke plates, and scratched at boys' eyes. I wanted to see the inside of its thick-lined stomach, that wild and rollicking, shadowy protrusion full of small footprints. I promised I would not kick and thrash to get out if it swallowed me whole. I would stay safe in the wet and warmth of its belly. I would trust its wrath. I thought I could earn its hunger as an arrogant child. We'd all been threatened with stories for years whenever the dishes sat idle or we hammered the words, I don't want to. The Juturna came to those children whose parents had given up on them. Children who had stolen their parents' throats and left them speechless. Parents who wanted fresh starts without exasperated sighs. Sometimes the Juturna would leave a shiny blue egg in the bed where the child had slept. And if the parents kept it warm, it would hatch into their new child, their wanted and obedient child. I did my best to encourage its arrival. I made lists of my misdeeds, writing them in mother's many voices, and turned them to smoke so they could travel wherever the Juturna was. When she found all the fuel in her lighters used up and my blistered and ashy hands, she threatened me with the Juturna. I could not stop smiling, no matter how much it angered her. And that anger was fuel too, was it not? We burned there together. Sadly, thick sludge did not rise from the floorboards. It did not congeal into marvelous shapes in the still air. Nothing crawled or retched over the bed sheets and out of the shadows. Nothing besides what was expected hissed or moaned in the night. I gnawed on my own arm to see. Perhaps I just did not taste right. The Juturna did not come, but Balak did. With his sing-song voice and inability to walk a straight line, he came for Mother, but she was not home, and so I let him in. His shoes are too big for him. No, it's his feet. No, it's his knees. They go different directions. His entourage was vast and whispered such rumors constantly, but they adored him despite his odd way of walking. They laughed when he laughed and wept when he wept, an echo chamber of emotions. It swept you away without warning, laughing or crying over the many cups hooked around his many fingers. You could not help but join him. His energy was short-lived, though, and Mother took so long to come home. He collapsed on the dusty rug from waiting. I did what Grandmother had told me to do if he entered the house without an invitation. I gave him cookies and tea and showed him the open window and the bright new day. He couldn't stay. The Juturna would never act with such a sensitive audience. Besides, it was exhausting, trying to keep someone happy, just so the furniture didn't start to float in the chain reaction of tears. With some convincing, Balak crawled out the window and left with his entourage. He would look for Mother elsewhere, but thanked me for the tea. When he was a safe distance away, I shouted into his oversized ears, "Can you send the Juturna for me?" I still hoped. He shook his head and wept, and his followers wept, until the water churned into the dust into mud. The rains lasted weeks. I knew why. I knew I was too old to become someone else's child, too tall to be replaced by a blue egg. I tracked my age by pencil marks in the kitchen, hunching my shoulders and letting the pencil dip down along my scalp, but still I grew. The Juturna's stomach was not so large. His palate favored child's flesh. When the baby fat moved into my hips, I knew the Juturna would never come. Still, I believed, in his absence as much as I had in his presence, and in that belief I saw the shadow he left behind. I could sense him in other houses. Jealousy was my bread. I knew the Juturna came from the boy with the clicking jaw and mealworm-colored sweater and the cauliflower ears. I sensed when the girl with the black teeth and the girl with the gray toes stopped walking along the sidewalk. No one counted them but me. There were always other explanations, ways to turn those gobbled into runaways or never-wases. I send my smoke signals still. The Juturna is slow-moving, and so I stay and wait, just in case. Balak has never come back to my house. He knows not to look for Mother here. She is too quiet now. Mother lies in the bed and does not scold me. Her tongue is too large in her mouth for such exertions. He would shrivel without adoration, and no one shouts his name against the clank of glasses in this house anymore. His entourage would have turned resentful without the required prestige. I imagine he's in the West Country, where the trees are larger and the water tastes like sour mash whiskey. I think of following him there. I thought he had come for a visit when the rain started again. They have not stopped for months, and even Balak could not have so many tears. Those who could swim are gone now, and I have no boat. I have no sturdy shoes for wading in deep waters. My escape will be the Juturna, as it was always meant to be. I have heard rustlings under the floorboards beneath Mother's bed. There is a veil of smoke that will not leave the house. It stays because the Juturna is almost here. It is coming, just like the stories always promised. And so I'll just read a very short little excerpt from what I'm working on right now. And all you really need to know for this part, without giving a really long explanation for the rest of the novel, is it's about Appalachian granny magic, so witches in mountains. And Mama means grandmother, and this particular Mama is holding her granddaughter Cecilia on her hip as they're going through the Appalachian forest. Mama strained through the thickening branches, letting the soles of her feet feel the delicate vibrations, listening with her body for where to turn, when to duck. A covey of quail circled around a nearby bush, 1, 2 times clockwise, and then turned the other way. Mama rotated her movements to match. Pay attention, she chanted to Cecilia. You have to look for the signs. Most roads lead one way their whole lives. Most roads, but not all of them. They finally reached a clearing, and Mama lowered Cecilia down from her hip. The clearing would have seemed soft and sun-dappled in the daylight. Now, in the darkness, all that could be made out were the dead and decaying bodies of ancient trees reflecting the moonlight. At least the ground was gentle enough for Cecilia to walk in her bare feet without complaint. Mama stretched her tired legs out, leaving Cecilia behind as she walked towards the bleached body of one of the long-dead trees. The stump beside the fallen giant was full of water and skimming insects. Mushrooms thickened around the dead roots, making the ground fleshy and slick. Cecilia hurried to catch up. There was no pomp in how Mama rooted around in the dark for what she needed. She pulled at the blanket of mushrooms, their caps split open to show the gilled undersides as she piled the remains behind her. Beneath it all lay a pair of crossed dowsing rods. They were simply made, twisted and rusting metal from hangers smoothed into right angles, not worth much. Cecilia was on her knees beside her grandmother watching. She had witnessed dowsing before, but that was in the heat of the sun when drought fears brought worried landowners to Mama's door. Cecilia had watched the men watch her grandmother work. She accepted their offers to fling her high above their heads when water was indeed found, her arms outstretched into the blue sky. She knew enough to know Mama was pointing the rods the wrong way if she wanted to look for deep water, and besides, the forest was wet enough. Something else was being searched for, but she just didn't know what yet. Mama lifted the thin L-shaped rods up and closed her eyes, felt the force of their tug and pull. It was faint, but it was there.